Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. A new poll is out which says the majority of Canadians want to see Prime Minister Justin Trudeau resign. Lethbridge mayoral candidates had a chance to share their vision with voters at an all-candidates forum on Monday night. And we hear from the president of the Justice Centre, who shares his thoughts of people have the legal and religious right to opt out of getting the COVID-19 vaccine.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. A new poll says the majority of Canadians feel that Justin Trudeau should resign. Now, despite winning another minority government, 55% of respondents said Trudeau should step down as Prime Minister. Only 45% suggested he should remain in Canada's top job. The poll was conducted by Maru Public Opinion and took place on Election Day and the day after. The survey grabbed a random sample of 1,510 Canadians. Now, when it comes to unity and broken down regionally, Albertans were the most likely to say that Canada is divided, with 88% agreeing with that statement. Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario were second, with 79% of people thinking that our country is divided. Additionally, 52% of Canadians believe the democratic system is broken and needs significant changes. One of the issues surrounding our Prime Minister's leadership was how Canada dealt with China when the two Michaels were held captive for more than 1,000 days. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says even though it was great that Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig came home, China really got everything they wanted when Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou was allowed to return to her homeland.
We're giving up our leverage with China. As much as we're very happy to see these two released because they never should have been apprehended to begin with, what's going to happen with China? We're having a harder and harder time, showing any sort of clout or having any sort of leverage over them, and it's getting increasingly more difficult. And this is one episode that the Chinese can really declare a victory on this one because they got everything they wanted.
Lisa will also have details on how the Taliban in Afghanistan has returned to their old ways. She'll have more details coming up in the second half of our program. The Alberta Medical Association says hospitals can no longer provide normal standards of intensive care because of a shortage of specialist staff. The association says demand for critical care is high due to the number of COVID patients assigned to each nurse has been increased. The group says the situation could lead to doctors having to make decisions about who receives life-saving treatment. The concern is raised in a public letter from the association's intensive care doctors about the COVID-19 health crisis that has left Alberta hospitals overwhelmed with patients. NDP finance critic and Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips had a harsh message Tuesday afternoon for the newly appointed Health Minister Jason Copping. Phillips says the Alberta government isn't doing enough to help out residents who've been experiencing a shortage of family physicians in the city. Phillips talked with two women who said they've lost their family doctors in Lethbridge. She outlined a 4-point 30-day action plan for Minister Copping to try to recruit doctors to Lethbridge and southern Alberta.
I need Minister Copping to develop a short-term, targeted physician recruitment plan for Lethbridge, and I need him to get that operational within 30 days. We have heard what is already happening in our ERs, what is already happening to primary care. This needs to happen right away. In order to simply get back to last year's levels, we need to bring in 15 new physicians. So we need to see the plan for that. It shows just how far this government has failed over the past 12 months of them dithering and not taking the responsibility and getting to work in the healthcare system.
I'm distraught at the fact that people in our community cannot access basic healthcare. And as the fourth wave of COVID is upon us, I'm extremely concerned of the repercussions that this will have on our already strained healthcare system in Lethbridge. The UCP government may think that this fourth wave is going to be quick and painless, but I don't know how we can manage any further pressure to our hospital at this time.
Now, Bridge City News reached out to Health Minister Jason Copping's office, but has yet to hear back. The NDP says 1/3 of Lethbridge residents do not have a family physician. The Alberta government added up the numbers and announced how much it has spent on advertising and other costs associated with COVID-19 vaccine promotion. In a release, the province says in 2021-2022, $12.1 million has been allocated to advertising, research, and other communication costs associated with COVID-19 vaccine promotion. In 2020-2021, the province spent $14.8 million taxpayers' dollars. It was $1.5 million in 2019 and 2020. Officials say some of the funding was also related to mental health resources, support for seniors, and regional ads aimed at specific communities. You know, there are many people in our country who say they do not want to get the COVID-19 vaccine based on their religious right. We asked John Carpe, president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, if those who refuse the jab based on their religion have a legal leg to stand on.
If your religious faith teaches against vaccination, against injecting something into your body, but the stronger legal claim is the Charter Section 7 right to life, liberty, and security of the person. And the Canadian courts, including the Supreme Court, have interpreted that to mean a right to bodily autonomy, which means that the government cannot coerce you or pressure you into receiving, getting injected with an experimental substance on which no long-term testing has been done to see what are the long-term effects on people. So if there's any direct pressure or indirect pressure, like a vaccine passport, that's a violation of a charter right to bodily autonomy.
With rising COVID-19 cases in Alberta, the City of Lethbridge has made the decision to implement a mandatory vaccination policy for all city staff. The city says at the end of the day, its goal is to protect the safety and health of all of its staff and community. All staff will have until November 15th to be fully vaccinated. City Manager Craig Dalton says he acknowledges that there may be some employees unhappy about the announcement, but says the risk of not taking this step was far greater than the objections that may have been raised.
Our intent is clearly for staff to comply, and so we'll work to that end, and we'll work with individual staff to hopefully realize that if there are staff who, for whatever reason, don't feel they can comply, then we'll have conversations with those individual staff members, and a number of steps that we think we can take. The intent of this policy is not to terminate staff. The intent of this policy is to move towards mandatory vaccination and a status or a state where all of our staff are vaccinated.
Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services staff are required to be fully vaccinated by October 31st. Also, all employees at city-owned facilities, such as the NMAC Centre, will need to receive the jab. The Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce hosted a mayoral Q&A forum on Tuesday night. As Micah Quinn explains, the candidates outlined their platforms going into the upcoming municipal election in October.
Stephen Mogden, Gary Clausen, Sheldon Daychief, Blaine Higgin, and Bridget Mearns took their seats and answered questions at the mayoral question and answer forum. Colton Menzak was not present. Bridge City News' Jeanette Rocher asked Stephen Mogden if he thinks that another supervised consumption site will be helpful for Lethbridge, or if he believes that there is another solution.
There were some problems with the supervised consumption site. Location maybe wasn't the best, and some of the operations maybe went a little further afield than other people thought that they should. But at the end of the day, we have to have those types of services in our community. I honestly weep for the community that doesn't, that wants to do away with that type of thing. That could be your kid out there.
Bridget Mearns was asked about what she thinks the potential implications would be for the city of Lethbridge should a ward system be put in.
I'm certainly open to the discussion. There's potentially a hybrid model where you have some that are in wards and some that are at large. So I would want to look at it further, see what the community has to say, and learn from them and take my cues from them. But traditionally in the past, I've felt that our city has not been large enough to accommodate a ward system.
The topic of family doctor shortages has been a hot-button issue in Lethbridge, and Blaine Higgin talked about what he would do to try to recruit physicians into the city.
Been in discussion with numerous doctors, and have looked at putting together a group, which they are very much in favor of, a committee to meet on a regular basis to find out who and how we can retain the doctors that we have and also encourage ones to move to our community.
Advanced voting will start on October 1st for all eligible voters, and the municipal election will take place on October 18th. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
If his name doesn't ring a bell, then any one of his 8 well-established restaurants might. Wally Schenk is one of 32 candidates looking to fill a seat on Lethbridge City Council. It says he wants to bring compassion to City Hall along with a strong business sense.
I feel I can contribute after 46 years in business, cut expenses, look after the taxpayers' dollars, because this is what they seem to be very interested in, is cuts cuts to expenses, controlling costs, controlling expenses. Another issue of mine, which is very close to heart, is the opioid issue. I had a couple of good friends' kids pass away just this last weekend. Myself, I've been sober for 17 years. My addiction was alcohol. And it's very close to me. And these people are not nobodies, they are somebodies.
Schenk also says he wants to make housing and taxation more affordable for seniors and young people. You know, when we were in our early years, we dreamt about growing up to become a police officer, firefighter, or even a rock star. But in this next story, Naveen Day spoke with 2 elementary school students who want to become politicians when they grow up.
It's not every day that you meet children who want to pursue a career in politics. But here in Taber, a 7-year-old wants to become the town mayor, and a 10-year-old wants to follow the footsteps of Lethbridge MP Rachel Harder. 7-year-old Landon Dyke and 10-year-old Tenley Angermeyer were invited by Taber Mayor Andrew Prokop to tour the town council chambers and give them a feel of what a career in politics would be like. Landon says that his desire to become the town mayor began 2 years ago.
I was 5 years old when I wanted to be the mayor. And I wanted to be the mayor because I just wanted to try new things.
I remember that day when we came home and we were talking about it, and Landon was so interested in it right away. And I looked over at him, I'm like, you want to be the mayor? And he's like, yeah, I want to be the mayor. But I wasn't too surprised, just mainly because of who Landon is. He's always been drawn to people who have a heart to serve others.
If elected mayor, Landon says his first order of business is going to make life in Taber more affordable and more sweet.
I want to make something free. The free thing is the free donut days. You get free donuts every Tuesday.
Tenley, however, has her sights set on Ottawa. She hopes to become the MP for Lethbridge and tackle social issues.
Everybody deserves to have everything that they need and help the homeless and the people who have special needs. Because everybody deserves to have a normal life as normal people do.
Mayor Prokop says it is encouraging to see children show an interest in politics at such a young age.
Well, obviously this is our future, and we're in very good hands going forward, and it's a thrill to me to see this kind of interest at this age.
Prokop says that it is important to introduce children to politics when they are young. He has given talks at schools to students as early as grade 2. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Free Donut Day, I love that. He's got my vote. Lethbridge Family Services recently presented their Friend of the Family Award to recipients in our community. The award has been dished out annually since 1988, with over 100 people being presented with the honor. The awards are given out to an individual or business who showcased excellence in Lethbridge.
Our work depends or reliant on the community, and many of our programs are actively engaging in the community to provide opportunity for individuals and businesses to participate and help our clients. And I think it's very unique award to acknowledge the excellent work that is being done by the community.
Lethbridge Family Services helps over 8,000 people improve their quality of life on an annual basis through programs such as home services, immigrant services, outreach, and counseling. This week marks Truth and Reconciliation Week. Organizations around the city are hosting community events to recognize the initiative, including Lethbridge College. As Carson Marsouk explains now, the college has some major events planned, including the unveiling of the Coming to Know and Learn Coulee Walk.
In recognition of Truth and Reconciliation Week, Lethbridge College unveiled a new Coming to Know and Learn Coulee Walk, where people can explore the coulees near the college while learning about the land we are on. Artist of the Coulee Walk project, William Singer III, says the walk is a self-guided tour that explores the traditional plants found in the area and their uses, and shares some of the traditional creation stories of the Blackfoot Confederacy.
The title is Sini, and that's Coming to Know. And this is where a lot of our knowledge was well retained. We got it from the ground, like it all came from the earth. That's our knowledge.
The group has been working on the walk for over 2 years. There are multiple signs along the path representing different elements of the Blackfoot Métis culture.
It's a series of 12 signs. 3 of them are introductory signs that relate to the creation and the cosmos. And the remainder are the different plants that you can see throughout the coulee here.
The Coming to Know and Learn Coulee Walk is in collaboration with the college and Indigenous community.
Well, the country, they understand, like all Indigenous peoples, they have their own systems, and it's all land-based. So this is what we're bringing to light, because what you see here is a college, Western institution, and what you see out here is the Indigenous institution. So this is where a lot of the Indigenous people got all of their knowledge, and we still do that to this day.
On Wednesday, the college is set to host Dr. Wilton Littlechild, a Cree chief, residential school survivor, and lawyer, who will talk about and recognize the importance of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. For Bridge City News, I'm Carson Marsouk.
The BC government says it will be giving Indigenous service providers an additional $1.5 million towards mental health and wellness support. Officials say the funding will help residential school survivors. The money is part of an initiative announced in June to support the BC Residential School Response Fund.
Our province announced $12 million for BC's Residential School Response Fund. And we've now allocated $1.5 million of that for Indigenous service providers to address the urgent needs for culturally safe and trauma-informed supports. The added funding will strengthen existing mental health and wellness and cultural support services across the province. And it will provide resources for ongoing engagement and supports for survivors, intergenerational survivors, and communities affected.
Immediately after the 215 announcement, I will say that we enacted the crisis line on our own and trying to figure out how we're going to do this. And a good portion of, I say the majority of the money that is provided is to ensure that this crisis line is up and running with the appropriate staff and qualified people to do so. I think it was 2 days after, for the next month and a half, our call line was averaging probably anywhere between the hours, and this is just based on the call log, between the working hours of 8:30 to 4:30, our call line was inundated with over 500 to 600 calls during those hours.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says his government has not asked for help dealing with the COVID-19 surge, but that is not to say that there will not be discussions about it. Moe says the talk about seeking help could come if Saskatchewan sees an even further increase in case numbers or hospitalizations. Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu says the surge of COVID-19 cases in Saskatchewan is concerning and heartbreaking, and Ottawa stands by to help any province with the resources they need. Manitoba's Chief Public Health Officer says the southern health region of the province makes up close to 50% of Manitoba's COVID-19 cases. Dr. Brent Roussin says that is despite the region having just under 15% of Manitoba's population. Roussin says he's concerned because vaccination and COVID-19 testing rates in the region are low. There have been 366 new infections in the province since Thursday. Health officials say Manitoba is currently experiencing the pandemic's fourth wave. Well, closer to home, it's felt a little more like fall today as we hovered around the mid-teens, temperature-wise in southwestern Alberta, but more of a warming trend is on the way. Complete weather details are coming up shortly. It was another beautiful fall day in the city. So many of the leaves are changing color. But here is a picture sent to us from Linda Gay-Monat capturing some of the beauty of the season around Hinton and west central Alberta. Look at all of that yellow mixed in with the green, and love the shot of the Rocky Mountains. Thanks so much, Linda. It looks just like a painting. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a complete look at our weather forecast. Jeanette, it should be a great week to maybe take a drive to the mountains and experience some of that beautiful color.
Yeah, I'm loving those gorgeous fall colors. Absolutely. I'm just hoping that those leaves will stick around for a while with all the wind that we've been having. So we're looking at another 40 to 60 kilometer per hour wind gusts this evening, and then into tomorrow, another 30 to 50 kilometer wind gusts. So hopefully those leaves sticking around for a while. Fingers crossed on that one. Into tomorrow, we are looking at sunshine and 17 degrees is the high, all the way up to a high of 25 though on Thursday, which is just lovely. Mix of sun and cloud. Into Friday, we're looking at 18 as the high, 20 the high for Saturday, a beautiful 25-degree day on a Sunday with lots of sunshine as well, and a lovely 24 degrees on Monday. So how do you like that for the start of October, which it will be, by the way, on Friday. So I'm loving the start to October this year, absolutely. Average high for this time of year, 18. Average low, 3 degrees. 30 degrees was where we were at in 1967, and we were sitting at -6 back in 1965. 7:27 is when the sun rose this morning, and our sunset this evening, 7:17 p.m. So yeah, days slightly getting a bit shorter there. Over on the west coast, we're looking at showers early in the day for both Victoria and Vancouver, then going to be cloudy for the rest of the day. 14 degrees Victoria, 13 in Vancouver, 18 in Edmonton and Calgary, a high of 15. Sunny throughout most of the day, going to get a little bit cloudy later on though, not too bad. As we look to the rest of the prairies, we are seeing a high of 21 degrees in Saskatoon with a mix of sun and cloud. Same thing for Regina. Winnipeg is really the warm one. Now look at that temperature, 28. Also their humidex is sitting at 32 degrees with the humidity, a mix of sun and clouds. So they're definitely the warm one, which I never thought I'd say that about Winnipeg. Toronto, 20 degrees and sunshine, 15 in Ottawa, mainly cloudy skies. Partially cloudy skies in Montreal with a high of 16 tomorrow. A little bit more rain though as we look further east to Atlantic Canada. Looking to Fredericton, we're seeing chance of rain, 19 degrees, chance of drizzle and showers in Halifax, 14. 13 the high in Charlottetown with also a chance of drizzle and showers. 2 to 4 millimeters of rain expected in St. John's, Newfoundland with a high of 22 tomorrow. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
A number of Real Canadian Superstore employees may be going on strike after members voted to support job action. Officials said 97% of voting members of the union voted to strike last week. There are around 10,000 union members who work at superstores across Alberta. The strike vote came down after the union struck down the latest offer from Loblaws to its employees. The union has 72 hours to serve strike notice if its members walk out. Negotiations between the two sides have been ongoing for more than a year. The latest round of bargaining began on Monday and will continue until at least Friday. Price acceleration and overvaluations are pushing the housing sector from a moderate to a high degree of vulnerability in Canada. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says it is largely due to persistent imbalances in several local housing markets across Ontario and Eastern Canada. CMHC says cities with high degrees of vulnerability are Toronto, Hamilton, Montreal, Moncton, and Halifax. Calgary, Edmonton, and Victoria have a moderate rating, while Vancouver, Saskatoon, Regina, and Winnipeg have a low degree of vulnerability. The OPEC oil cartel's World Oil Outlook report says thanks to the energy needs of expanding economies, oil will still be the world's #1 source of energy through the year 2045. But it says having more electric vehicles on the road in wealthy countries will see a decline in demand here. OPEC predicts energy demand will increase by 28% over the next 4 years, driven by an expected doubling in size of the local economy and the addition of around 1.7 billion people worldwide by 2045. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 289 points in the day to 20,174. The Dow was down 569 points to 34,300. The S&P 500 was down 90 points to 4353, and the Nasdaq was down 423 points to 14,547. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $1.11 to $74.34 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 13 cents to $5.84 US. Gold was up 2 cents to $17.3403 US an ounce, and silver was even at $22.46 US an ounce. Wheat is at $11.29 per bushel, barley's at $9.04, canola's at $20.07, and corn is at $10.82 per bushel. Live cattle were down 40 cents to $122, feeder cattle were up $1.35 to $156.13, and lean hogs were up $1.43 to $91.68. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to $78.81 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, a new poll says the majority of Canadians feel that Justin Trudeau should resign. Despite winning another minority government, 55% of respondents said Trudeau should step down as Prime Minister. Only 45% suggested he should remain in Canada's top job. The poll was conducted by Maru Public Opinion and took place on Election Day and the day after. The survey grabbed a random sample of 1,510 Canadians. Well, the White House says the release of the two Michaels from China has nothing to do with the deal the U.S. government struck with Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou, allowing her to return home. Coming up, our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will give us her thoughts if the two were connected. The two Michaels finally returned home after being held captive in China for more than 1,000 days. To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from LA. Lisa, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig were released shortly after Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou cut a deal with the U.S. government in relation to fraud charges. Now, she was allowed to return home to China. Now, the White House says the release of the two Michaels, nothing whatsoever to do with Meng Wanzhou being allowed to return to her home country. I mean, come on. Are we supposed to believe that?
Yeah, I'll have to say again, if you believe that, I have that bridge to sell you. This goes along with a lot of other things coming out of the White House right now that are very, very skeptical. And really, let's start with the priorities here in terms of the Michaels being released. I know that they were arrested in December of 2018, so that it's been a horrific time for them and their families, almost 3 years in captivity on bogus charges. So I was very happy to see that they got a very warm and well-deserved welcome in Canada, across the board with leaders and their families and all Canadians really celebrating their release. And as you said, are we supposed to believe that this was not a deal that was cut? Obviously, it was. These two landed hours apart from each other. She landed back in China and the two Michaels back in Canada. And obviously there were three-way talks between the US, Canada, and China to have this release. But we're giving up our leverage with China. As much as we're very happy to see these two released because they never should have been apprehended to begin with, what's going to happen with China? We're having a harder and harder time, showing any sort of clout or having any sort of leverage over them, and it's getting increasingly more difficult. And this is one episode that the Chinese can really declare a victory on this one because they got everything they wanted. And let's remember again that the two Michaels were arrested 2 weeks after the Huawei executive was taken in. And she was taken in Canada at the request of the United States because she was wanted for fraud charges, banking fraud charges. And what will happen with this case? What will happen with Huawei and other companies that are taking advantage of the Western economy? What will happen with the Chinese? What will happen with the Chinese in Hong Kong and in Taiwan and everywhere across the globe where they are taking advantage of our kindness, our naivete? I don't know what to call it, but we're happy that the Michaels are home.
Absolutely, you bet. Now, Lisa, the Taliban is resorting back to some of their old ways. They displayed bodies of 4 people they say were killed by police, people who were involved in a kidnapping ring, and the bodies were put in various parts of Herat for public display. Now, the Taliban says this will send a pretty strong message to criminals in Afghanistan. But you talk to a lot of people, that's pretty barbaric, but the terrorist group feels that this is quite an effective deterrent.
Yeah, well, barbaric is the way that they're going. Even though they've promised the West that they are new and improved, they're moderate, they're reformed, they're not the Taliban of the 90s, they're absolutely that and maybe worse because now they have legitimacy behind them. They have a flag, they have a palace, they have a capital, they have a sovereign nation under their control. So we're looking at such barbaric moves for them to really set the precedent, to set the tone of what they expect from the people who live under their country and under their flag. And of course, by displaying these bodies on cranes, it's almost like the old biblical, they chop their hand off if they steal, so that it's, a visual for others not to do the same crime. But across the board, whether it's the morality police on how women are dressing, are telling the barbers not to trim men's beards too short so that it doesn't look too modern. Schools, they're not teaching in a co-ed fashion. They've told women to stay home from universities, told women to stay home from high-profile jobs. It's not going to be the same Afghanistan, but it looks like it's going to be the same Taliban and maybe worse.
Now, speaking of women, the Afghanistan girls soccer team has been granted asylum in Portugal, Lisa. The girls aged 14 to 16 and their families were fearing what their lives might become under the Taliban, so they left their homes and everything else behind.
Yeah, this is one of the happy stories. These are young women who are very accomplished athletes. There's, it's a large variety of women. Well, some of them want to be doctors and teachers and astronauts and judges and all that. It's a very colorful story when you read the details of each young woman and what her hopes and dreams are. But we also have to take a moment to realize that there are many young women who are left behind that don't have this opportunity, like the soccer team has. Now they're going to start over in Portugal and maybe move on to other places in the West, but they are able to, be free and to live in a way that they like, and perhaps continue playing soccer and perhaps continue going on to medical school and wherever else their aspirations take them. But though there are women that are left behind in Afghanistan who will not have that opportunity, won't be able to play soccer or whatever sport they play, won't be able to dance and sing and do whatever that they want to do. So it's a happy, happy story, but of course, it reminds us of those who do not have this fortune.
Yeah, the U.S. State Department is under pressure to find creative solutions, Lisa, right now to help vulnerable Afghans who were left behind in the evacuation. They're in hiding. It'll be even more challenging now that the United States no longer has an embassy in Afghanistan.
Exactly. And how the numbers that they're citing right now is that about 125,000 were evacuated by the United States and allies starting in August through the end of evacuation. And they are estimating that about 100,000 others are left behind. And what this kind of constitutes those who either help the United States as researchers and volunteers and translators and those who worked in think tanks and those who, were drivers and such. So they are marked, meaning they are in danger because they help the United States. And leaving them behind is as if we left Americans behind because they did help us. It doesn't send a good message to those who want to help us, around the world, wherever the United States has a presence. What's the message there? We will abandon you when we're done with you. And now, as you said, we don't have an embassy, so we don't have any sort of leverage to say to the Taliban, listen, we need to get these people out. And they're not keen to let their own out. They don't want a brain drain. They don't want their best and brightest to leave. They don't want their translators and researchers to leave. They don't want their doctors to leave, researchers to leave. So for that reason, they're not going to be keen on letting these individuals leave. Not only that, they will have this mark on them. So they will be even in more danger if they do try to leave. That's why they have to look for creative solutions. And that probably means escaping by ground transportation, trying to get to a neighboring country. And from there, and remember that the neighboring countries have had enough. They're not about to open their arms up to the Afghan people because they know that it will lead to, hundreds of thousands of refugees flooding over the border. So they don't want that issue. And for that reason, even the ones who have a legitimate reason and wanting to get out and having to get out to not risk their lives will have a challenge in doing so.
Will some of those countries, neighboring countries like Pakistan, even accept a lot of these Afghan refugees? Or just say, you know what, go back home?
Yeah, they've put a stop to it. Uzbekistan was a place where Tajikistan, where a lot of the Afghan people were quickly trying to find refuge. But again, they're sending them back. They're closing the borders. They're not making it as easy as it once was because again, they don't want to deal with the refugee problem. They've learned and they've watched across the globe where the Syrian migrants and the Afghan migrants from the previous war and the Iraqi migrants from the previous war were on the march, and they're all over Europe and different countries where they had a very lax migration policy, and they saw how it affected those places. So a lot of these countries don't want to be inundated with refugees. They don't want to deal with the issue, and they'd rather say no from the get-go.
Now, the Taliban has asked foreign airlines, Lisa, to resume commercial flights into Kabul, saying problems at the airport have been resolved and the facility is now fully operational. But let me ask you something. Will foreign airlines, which are not Taliban friendly, even want to fly into Kabul, fly in and out of Afghanistan?
Right, and that's the important question here. The Taliban want to do everything in their power to make it seem like, oh, it's another day in our beautiful country of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. That's what they're calling themselves. So they want to do everything possible to make it look like we're a smoothly run country, but beneath the surface, they are scrambling to make the Islamic Emirate that they want it to be. So, of course, they're not going to have, flights coming in and out of places that are not sanctioned by the Taliban. And of course, who gets on, who gets off. The Kabul airport, of course, is basically a war scene over the last 2 months with everything that went on over there. But based on reports, we're hearing that they have fixed the airport. They have remodeled it in some areas where it needed to be fixed. And now they're claiming that they're ready to be back in business.
Now, it appears as though not a lot of countries are recognizing the Taliban as a government in Afghanistan, not even Russia. What will that mean for the country moving forward? How will they be able to do business internationally?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because you have like the Russians, for example, coming to the United Nations General Assembly and saying, "Wait a minute, we're not on board here," which is surprising because the Russians are always on board, particularly when it comes to Afghanistan. You know that they have a history there, but I think this just means that the Russians are playing podium diplomacy and they're just trying to say what needs to be said at the United Nations, but the Taliban have their own friends. That's the sad part. No Western sanctions or marginalization or isolation will work this time around. We gave up any sort of leverage we had with Afghanistan, and now it will be the Qataris, the Chinese, and of course, I think the Russians will still come around. Of course, the Iranian regime is on board. With the Iranian regime, perhaps comes the Venezuelans and some other rogue elements, but they have enough of a list of close friends that have come to their rescue. Pakistan, of course, being a neighboring nation and wanting to be on good terms with the Taliban, has already come forward as well. So we call these, the friends of the Taliban. They're there, they're present, they've already made their voices heard, and they've said that they want a seat at that table when it comes to the Taliban and, outlining the future of what Afghanistan will be.
Lisa, the International Atomic Energy Agency says that Iran has failed to fully comply with terms of the recently reached nuclear monitoring agreement. Under the agreement, Iran must allow the agency to access monitoring equipment and replace its memory cards, which hasn't really happened yet.
Yeah, it's interesting if you read some of these left-leaning Western publications about this particular story. It's exactly what you said, that the deal was that the UAE demands, I'm sorry, the IAEA demands that this is the UN's watchdog group for Iran's nuclear weapons, demands that they go in there and they have access, they have transparency, that they're able to replace these memory cards and have access to these memory cards. And the report goes that they were able to do so except for one location. And the way that the report sounds is like, okay, well, you got the majority of them. You don't need that one last location. No, we need to know all of these locations because that last location is where they may be, producing a bomb. And that's probably the case. Why give the IAEA access up to the 1 yard line and not give them that last location if you're not hiding anything? If you're going to be transparent, be transparent. So the report does kind of say they're doing their best. That's the tone of it. But the reality is that the Iranian regime is not complying. We're not surprised. They're calling the shots as usual, and they believe that the West wants a nuclear deal. So they will release as many reports as possible up to the point where the West is fearful. The United States, particularly the Biden White House, says we need a deal today, and let's not delay. And that's exactly what's going to happen. In the coming weeks, we're going to see the White House turn around again and say we need to get back to the negotiating table because the Iranians are closer than ever to a nuclear bomb. And it's not logical by any means to say that because they are marching forward with a bomb, we should get into a deal with them. They should show us that they're not going towards a bomb, that's not where that their intentions and motivations are. But here we have it. The truth is that they're not giving us access. They're not giving the inspectors access, and we're fearful that they will have a bomb very, very soon.
Lisa, we only have a few short moments left here, but I wanted to talk to you about North Korea. They say they have hope for peace and a summit with South Korea if Seoul shows some respect. What kind of respect are we talking about here?
North Korea is always asking for respect. I think they have a very big, if you look at their history, it's actually true that they've always had these parades and it's just all about respect and honor. And that's what happened between Donald Trump, for example, and Kim Jong Un was maybe perhaps a show of that. That if you respect us, we can respect you. It didn't go anywhere further than that, but it was kind of like an exchange of respect. And letters that ensued after that, well, we don't know if they were full of respect or not. But now Kim Jong Un's sister is on the scene, and she says, "We're ready to sit down with South Korea, but we need to have respect." And we invite them to take the first move, make the first move. And so now we're waiting for this courtship between North and South to begin. Both sides have expressed interest, and again, so if there's respect, we can go forward and see what happens between North and South Korea.
Reminded of Rodney Dangerfield, no respect, no respect. Shows how old I am here. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from Los Angeles. Thanks so much, Lisa.
My pleasure.
Weddings are beautiful and we look forward to them, but then the hard work begins. And I'm not talking about wedding planning, I'm talking about staying married and building a healthy marriage that takes some effort. So joining us to discuss how we can do this is Monica Lowen. She is the Minister of Community Engagement at the Evangelical Free Church in Lethbridge. Welcome to Bridge City News, Monica. So great to have you on today.
Thanks, Jeanette. It is great to be here.
Awesome. So, Monica, your church has a marriage course starting on October the 4th. So can you maybe tell us a little bit about what the focus will be and how it will work as an online course?
For sure. This is actually the second time that we're offering the marriage course online. So this is a free 7-week course. It's been developed by Alpha International, so the same people that brought us the Alpha course. And so while it's actually originally designed to take part in a group setting, COVID-19 has taught us how to do all sorts of things differently. And so what's resulted in this is actually the opportunity to take part in this marriage course in the safety and privacy of your own home as a couple. And we had a lot of great feedback this spring from couples who spoke about wonderful conversations that were sparked by the material that they were able to have because they weren't on a timeline, they didn't have other people around. We also have a mentor couple who will be available to all the participants of the course if they do want to talk to somebody.
That sounds awesome. So always near the top of the marriage strengthening list is communication, of course. So why is this so important, Monica, and why does it seem so difficult to do?
We have seen a lot of amazing technologies just in my short lifetime, let alone throughout civilization. Yet one of the things that we still can't do as couples is actually read each other's minds. And so in order to be able to live and operate in harmony, there needs to be good communication. And so we see this in simple things like talking about who's going to pick up a kid from soccer, as well as tougher conversations, maybe about finances or sex. Without communicating, you just don't know what your partner's thinking.
I know. I wish we're all mind readers. It would make things so much easier, wouldn't it? So do you have any practical steps then that couples can put into practice to become better communicators?
For sure. I think one of the biggest gifts you can give your partner in the area of communication is becoming a better listener. I can't tell you how many times I've missed what my husband is saying because I'm already preparing my next response. So one of the practical tools that the course talks about is using reflective listening, which while awkward is a great tool to ensure you've both been heard and understood, and you've heard and understood what the other person has said. So this involves listening to what your partner says and then reflecting or repeating back to them what you heard and then asking clarifying questions. It can seem really awkward, but it takes away the opportunity for misunderstanding and it makes you focus better on what they're saying. And then in addition to that, make it a priority. Schedule time to regularly catch up in your day as well as longer times during the week or the month. It can get pretty easy to get caught up in life and then realize, oh, wait, we haven't talked in a few days. So just figure out what works. Whether that's sitting down at the table for a coffee, going for a walk, just make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Now, men and women, we are wired so differently, right? We think differently, and experts tell us that we tend to have different needs in marriage. I guess that's not a big surprise. So do you have some examples of where our needs are often different?
You know, this is a topic that a lot of books have been written on, things like women are from Venus, men are from Mars, that type of thing. And we are absolutely different from each other. Both of us, we each have different gifts, abilities, different needs. However, actually, I hesitate to classify these as simply a male and female thing. We're all uniquely created, each one of us in the image of God, but with amazing and fantastic differences. And these differences show up in intimate relationships, particularly in marriage. So these differences can complement each other wonderfully, but they can also cause struggles. And I think when we generalize what is typically male and female, we can further cause more problems for people who don't tend to fit in those boxes. I know this has been true for me in the past. I remember being a young married, learning about how all men want is respect and women all want love. So I just needed to respect my husband, and then he would give me the kind of love that I, as a woman, was looking for. Except I found myself longing for the respect that I was told that men wanted. So I was left not only not getting what I was needing, but also feeling maybe there was something wrong with me as a woman because I didn't fit into the box that I was told women fit into. And I'm going to guess I'm not the only person who's felt this way, whether it's a woman wanting the respect she's told belongs to a man, or a man looking for tender care and affection that's generally assigned to women's needs. And so I think all that to say, we're all unique individuals with unique desires and needs. And I think the key is to see our partner as unique and to acknowledge and value the ways in which they are different from us, seeing them for who they are, uniquely and wonderfully created in the image of God.
I really love that, because, and it seems like there's more and more research coming out these days too, that, we don't just put people in those boxes. This is male, this is female. I mean, there's so much to us, and we're such unique individuals. It's crazy interesting how God made us. And the other thing is, if we don't understand that our spouse has a different need from us, then we're likely not going to be able to meet those needs, right? So that ties into communication then, right?
Absolutely, it ties in with communication. I mean, how are we sharing these needs with our partner? How are they hearing us? And so this takes courage and vulnerability as well as self-awareness. Do I know what I need? The other day, I was really frustrated with the latest COVID restrictions, and I was just grumpy. And I was expressing this to my husband, who actively joined in the conversation, which actually frustrated me more. And I realized after a minute, what I needed in that moment was for him to just stop, acknowledge my frustration, and actually just feel sorry for me for a minute. But that took me stopping and acknowledging my internal frustration, thinking it through. And without that self-awareness, and then in turn telling him what I needed, my frustration would have continued to grow and likely been vented in his direction for something he didn't do or didn't even know about.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned COVID, because I think COVID is causing a lot of conflict with a lot of people. So in marriage, when conflict does come up, we have different ways of handling that. Like you said, we're all so unique. So what are some of the typical unhealthy responses to conflict?
So Doctors John and Julie Gottman of the Gottman Institute, they talk about 4 responses to conflict, and they call them the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which I think is pretty accurate. The first would be criticism, where you take your anger off the situation, you point it at your partner. What might have started out as an argument about being late for an appointment turns into a personal attack on your partner about their selfishness and disrespect. The second would be contempt, which looks like name calling and mocking and ridiculing, using hurtful words to bully your partner into what you want. The third would be defensiveness, giving a message to your partner that their concerns really don't matter. And when this is used often, it really comes across as self-centered. And the last one would be stonewalling, or just checking out. So when you are starting to feel attacked by your partner, you simply shut down, which might be going silent, not looking at them, just effectively ending the conversation, but also closing the door to resolving that conflict.
Those are some bad ways. So on the flip side, what are some better ways of handling conflict without starting World War III?
I think this is another area where self-awareness is key. Of those 4 conflict responses we just talked about, do you know which one you lean towards? Have you talked about that as a couple? I know my go-to is criticism. So it's up to me to catch myself when we head down that road. We read in scripture numerous times about being slow to anger. And to me, this means when I feel that anger starting to build, I need to step back. Instead of responding right away, I need to stop, think about the situation. What am I actually upset about? Is it about the issue at hand, or is it being driven by something else? Am I actually frustrated with my partner, or does he just happen to be the person I'm going to take it out on? And so when you are actually angry with your partner, again, slow is important, choosing words carefully, remembering you can't take them back. If a discussion gets heated, take a time out, or both of you step away for a set amount of time before coming back to find a resolution. And again, listening carefully. This is where that reflective listening can come in. Not only does that slow the conversation down, when it's done well, it places you in your partner's shoes, bringing understanding, empathy. Man, learning how to resolve conflict or how to fight fair, that is such an important part of a healthy relationship.
Yeah, those are such good nuggets of wisdom. Probably easier said, harder to put into practice at times. So is this something that you discuss in your online class, as how to actually implement that in a practical way? Especially in the heat of the moment, it's hard.
It really is hard in the heat of the moment. So I think those practices of that reflective listening, learning those tools ahead of time so that they can come back in that heat of the moment and cause you to step back and slow down.
Yeah, good advice. Now, we might not realize it, but the way we deal with marriage issues oftentimes goes back to the way we were raised, right? So our parents modeled certain behaviors to us, and we usually end up behaving the very same way or similarly anyway. So why is this important to talk this over as couples?
Our families of origin have a huge impact on us. I can't tell you how many times I can hear my mom's voice in the back of my head, or I say or I do something and I'm struck at how much I'm like my dad. I'm blessed to have parents whose marriage was amazing to see. My parents were truly partners and best friends in everything. They demonstrated respect, honor, they cared for each other well. And so because their marriage worked out so well, I assumed that how they did things was then just how you did things in marriage. Turns out just because it worked for them doesn't mean it works for everyone. And I think anybody can relate to that. So having conversations about what we think and believe is key to reducing those misunderstandings, as well as just getting to know and understand our partners. When we can understand where the other person is coming from, it's a lot easier to extend grace. Without that understanding, we can quickly go on the attack with your questioning motives, disregarding their point of view. And so it's important to understand where each one's coming from, to learn about and acknowledge what we've each inherited from our families of origin, and then to take that and build a relationship that works for the two of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. And it goes back to that everyone's such unique individuals and we all come from different backgrounds. So you were very blessed to have a really good marriage modeled for you. Not everybody has that. Some people come from more dysfunctional families. So if a couple comes together with that, do you suggest different types of counseling? Maybe an individual counseling just to deal with the issues from the past?
Absolutely. I think we can all use counseling all the time. So I'm a huge proponent of that. And so in a marriage where perhaps one or both is coming from a history of perhaps dysfunction or broken marriage, individual counseling and then professional counseling before a wedding already actually is what we would really suggest. And to keep that counseling going and learning from things like the marriage course, working with a mentor couple, learning healthy practices so that a marriage will turn out healthier perhaps than the one that was viewed growing up.
Mm-hmm. Now, they always say that one of the big conflicts in marriage, or one of the things that causes divorce, it's either money or sex, right? So another topic, of course, that your course deals with is that intimacy. So it may be uncomfortable to address, but it really is a key area that needs to be discussed to have a solid relationship. Is that right?
Absolutely. A sexual relationship is the most physically intimate relationship you can have with another person. That is an area of deep vulnerability. God designed sex to bring a husband and a wife closer together, but as with everything else in this broken world we live in, sin has had an impact on this. So if you think back to the garden, the first response we see to the fall is Adam and Eve's shame and their recognition of their nakedness, of their complete vulnerability before each other and before God. And so in marriage, there's that same vulnerability, both emotionally and physically. And it takes work and time to build the trust that's required for that vulnerability. And so this is another area where communication comes in, and the ability to be completely open about a topic that is intensely personal, trusting that your partner will hear and honor what you have to say.
Yeah. So what kinds of things tend to cause difficulty for couples in those intimate situations, I guess?
Just like we're shaped by our families of origin, we're also shaped by the world around us. And so we enter into relationships with preformed thoughts and views on sex and sexuality, both positive and negative. And it's important to recognize and share these views as well as the impact they've had on you. This includes teaching you may have received within the church. There's been a lot of conversation lately regarding purity culture and the impact that's had on the generation to whom that was focused on. So to individuals who grew up understanding that sex was bad or it was wrong, it can make it really difficult to view sex as the gift that God created it to be. While I acknowledge and believe that God designed sex to be between one man and one woman, we know that many married couples have had previous sexual partners. My husband and I have both been previously married, so we each have had a previous sexual partner. And so that has an impact on a relationship that needs to be acknowledged, it needs to be addressed. And without good communication and honest conversation, that can cause difficulties. And there's also many, far too many, who've been impacted by the trauma of sexual abuse. And this must be handled with special care and attention, both within a professional counseling situation, as well as a safe, loving relationship.
Great advice there. Really quick, because we are out of time, can you tell our viewers how to get registered for this upcoming marriage course?
Absolutely. We would really encourage everyone to take a look at it, whether you've been married for 6 months, 40 years. They can go to our website, efreelethbridge.ca, scroll down, information and registration is there.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for your time today, Monica. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Monica Lowen is the Minister of Community Engagement at the Evangelical Free Church of Lethbridge. I'm Jeanette Roche. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.